Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of my show, William Wallace for America. Today, I'm with State Senator Sharon Hewitt. I always let her say district number
1.
I love it because it's, I don't know, for me, it's just another way of saying this district's number 1.
That's right. We're the best.
I love it. I love it. Well, today we're going to talk about a lot of her legislation that either got passed, some of it that I don't think you had any that got vetoed at all. So you're one of the few lucky ones that had nothing vetoed. But in this next upcoming session, as you know, they're already talking. Well, I'll say the next upcoming session, they're already talking about a possible veto session. There's a lot of things that we're going to talk about concerning that, but also legislation that made it through and some that got vetoed, and a lot of it I want you to talk about too. Senator, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Well, you had some good legislation that did not get vetoed that I think is really important for the public to know about. We're going to start with 2 easy ones. First, what was one of your first easy ones? I'll say easy because most people don't see it as being a big thing, but it really is a big thing.
Well, I passed 3 bills that I'm especially proud of. The first one is Senate Bill 124, and that bill requires you to play or sing the national anthem before an athletic competition in a taxpayer-funded facility. And so this is really about respect for our veterans and remembering and recognizing them before a sporting event. So it would apply to the Little League baseball game at the Slidell Park. It was built with taxpayer dollars, all the way up to a high school or college or professional venue. And I think part of it for me was also in trying to make sure that our young people learn the words of the national anthem, and again remember that the point of the national anthem is respecting those who fought and defended our freedoms. And so I'm very excited about that bill. We're working to spread the word throughout the state, to parish folks and school board members, so that they know that this bill is there and they can develop policies to be able to implement it.
What I like about that is respect. I think the underlying thing that it teaches people is respect, and I like that. It's a good way to start off not only a sporting event, but a good way to start off any type of public event, like you said.
Well, and it's a great reminder of the thing that unites us, and that is that we still live in the greatest country in the world.
Right.
And patriotism is a wonderful uniter, and I think sometimes we need a little bit more uniting. We're going to continue to work on things and see things differently in terms of how to make our world better and our country better. But this is a great uniter, and so I'm very proud of it, and I think that Louisiana will be a leader in this area.
Now, you had another one on education, right? Something about, was it kindergarten, I think?
Well,
or no, not kindergarten. It was the early childhood education, right?
Yeah. So Senate Bill 222 focuses on our youngest readers, and it basically says, third graders have to be reading on grade level before they move on to the 4th grade. It's drawing a line in the sand and saying Louisiana's tired of being last.
Right.
And it starts with reading. There was a study done last fall that said something like 60% of our kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade readers were not reading on grade level in the state of Louisiana. 60%. Well, that just really blew my socks off. And because if you're not reading, then you're not ready to learn social studies and all the other things waiting for you in grades moving forward. We also know that high school students, folks that weren't reading on grade level, are 4 times less likely to graduate from high school. And so they're set up for a lifetime of challenges if they are not reading on grade level when they should be. And so there has been an Early Literacy Accountability Commission that basically worked with me on this, as well as the superintendent and all of the education leaders in our state and really around the country, to put some provisions in place that will provide support and interventions, much more parental involvement in making sure that our kids learn to read.
And what I like about this is, it's a lot of people think, well, why would you need legislation? But just what you just now said, sometimes the legislation kicks off everything else that needs to be addressed. So people go, oh wait, we have to meet that bar, we have to meet that level for our community or our children, and so then you have to back up and set things in place to meet that bar.
That's right. There will be screenings, there will be assessments, there will be conversations with parents, there will be interventions, there will be a plan for every student
Right.
to get them on track to read. And I think that if we do nothing else, we need to make sure that our kids are reading.
Right.
And so this was a great, kind of watershed moment, I
Yeah.
think, for our state. My bill also establishes an accountability system for kindergarten through second grade. So, there's a letter grade system
Right.
for every other grade except K through 2.
Okay.
And so this established a way for us to do that. So you can grade schools and how they are performing relative to teaching kids to read is a factor.
Yeah, so just getting a pass.
Yes. And so, this will factor into their district and their school accountability scores, how well they are working to teach our children to read.
And then that way, the more people will be more cognizant of how to make their children read better in their schools, and they'll be able to tweak that as needed to be able to make it work.
My dad always said, you get what you measure.
I like that, yeah.
And so if you aren't measuring it, you're not driving those results.
Right.
So we're going to measure it, we're going to talk about it, and the superintendent and Bessie are all on board, and so I look for us to move the needle in this area in the coming years.
Now you had a third bill that passed, and which one was that?
That was Senate Bill 221,
Okay.
the voting system bill.
Oh, that's, yeah, good. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, there was certainly a lot of interest in that bill. And the bill in general did two things. First of all, it shifted our voting system from an electronic system to a paper-based system. And the benefit of doing that is in a paper-based system, which, by the way, 30 some odd other states have,
Okay.
a paper-based system is auditable. And your vote of record is your paper ballot.
Okay.
So that is a much better system. The electronic system that we currently have and we've had for 30 years,
Right.
you push the button to cast your vote, it's a digital vote. There's no way to audit that. There's no backup. There's no checks and balances in that system.
The vote actually creates a mark inside, which if you printed it, it reflects what you're pushing, whereas your ballot system actually, the paper ballot actually signals the machine, and so there's always that backup.
Well, there's several different ways that
Okay.
vendors do the paper system. So some of them you could say, well, we're going to hand mark our ballot and then, circling in like with the number
Right.
2 pencil
Yeah.
and then run it through a scanner where your vote actually gets cast and it gets tabulated with everybody else's vote. Some systems that are also paper-based would have you marking on a machine your choices. It would spit out a paper receipt, some people call it a ballot, that shows what your choices were,
Right.
allows you to check those and say, yes, that was my intent. You walk over to the scanner, you scan it in, again, it gets counted and tabulated that way. Both of those are paper-based systems. They have all their pluses and minuses. We wrote into the bill lots of details in making sure that any of the equipment that's used is not connected to the internet. They don't talk to each other. Everything is very isolated
Right.
and protected. And so that was one of the big shifts in this bill, was moving us to a paper-based system. The other part was broader. It was about more transparency in our system and rebuilding public confidence. And so part of that is going to be accomplished by the Voting System Commission, which we established. It's a 13-member board. It consists of 4 legislators, 4 citizens, 4 election experts, and a cybersecurity expert. And we're going to work on the details, basically, on how to implement the bill and which paper-based system is the best way to go. There's certainly an awful lot of support around the state for hand-marked secure paper ballots. That probably will be where we end up.
Right.
But part of this is the journey in having people have a venue where they can testify. We can bring in election experts from around the country.
So on this board, this is all that board you're talking about?
Yes, the
People will
voting
come-
system.
yeah.
We will have public hearings. People will be able to testify. We'll have the vendors there. We can have the machines there, the systems that people are offering, so that we together as a state are moving towards the answer, instead of us just trying to write the answer into state law from the beginning. And I think that's part of what will help build people's confidence, is that they felt like they had an opportunity to be heard,
Yeah.
or they chose to watch the proceedings online.
I see it.
All of that is available to help rebuild people's confidence, because, whether you believe, what happened in other states happened or not, it
Right.
doesn't matter. It has shaken people's confidence.
Right.
And even here in Louisiana, where we felt like we probably had a reasonably secure election,
Exactly.
people still have doubts. And so part of our process is to rebuild confidence.
And what I like about this is, that it gives that paper feel. It's not going backwards; it's going forward in a way that it's still being tabulated electronically. But it gives, like you said, having something tangible that you can hold in your hand, gives people that confidence to know that their vote really did matter. And that is what it's all about, to make sure that, sometimes you have to have that to feel that confidence, to know at the end of the day that that election was secure.
Well, and they'll be able to look at the paper and confirm that that is their intent,
Right.
and before their vote is officially cast. And so that's terrific. If, for example, it shows that that was not their intent, they made a mistake in some way, they would go to the poll worker, they would void that ballot, they call it a spoiled ballot, and they would give them a different ballot that they would be able to execute. And then that's all accounted for at the end
Right.
of the night, to make sure that every ballot is accounted for, and they knew that they had one spoiled ballot.
So 221 kind of brings us up brings us out of you said 30-year-old machines, brings us out of 30-year-old machines into a new age, but still having some stepping stones in there that make it auditable.
Absolutely. And it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It'll take probably 3 years, the Secretary is saying, to be able to, move the old systems out and to bring the new system in. We can't afford to pay for everything
Right.
all at one time, perhaps. Or maybe it's just a logistical challenge in terms of implementation. That's his job, is to figure that out. But I'm very excited about the work of the Commission. I think that we will, again, have lots of great things
Right.
to talk about, lots of research being done, and we're going to look back on this and say this was a good thing and allowed our state to move forward 30 years later into
Right.
the 21st century.
I love it. I love it. So what I also like about it is how much input citizens are going to be able to have into this, or the open committees, so people aren't going to feel left out of it at all. They're going to be able to be involved in this in a public forum. I really like that. Well, there's what also you mentioned in something you had put out, that there are eight election reform bills. So 221 was yours that got out and is passed, did not get vetoed. But then there was another one that passed. It was Mike Johnson's bill. Would you explain that one that got passed too?
Yeah, Representative Johnson had a bill that helps basically get dead people off of our rolls.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's something, again, common sense.
Yeah.
We can all agree on that. And it had processes by which information would be communicated sooner from the Department of Health, for example, that someone
Right.
passed away, to the Secretary of State's office, so that the rolls could get updated much
Yeah.
more quickly and more efficiently. And so that was a non-controversial bill. It passed early in the session. The governor signed it very early as well.
I like that. So the governor signed it. Good for him on that, to get some dead people off the rolls. And that's another one of those laws that helps give people confidence in our election system. So there were 6 of them that got vetoed. And in this next veto session, everybody, that's a hot topic. Can we talk about those a little bit? So there's 6 of them. There's Senate Bill 63. That was Senator Mills' bill, I think. What did that one do that got vetoed?
Yeah, Senator Mills.
That won't do now.
Yeah, Senator Mills passed a bill that basically works with absentee balloting. And our current law says that you can return your absentee ballot by mail or by fax or in person. And you do that by returning it to the Registrar of Voters office and giving it to a Registrar of Voter employee.
Okay.
And so he worked on that issue. He also added to his bill the ability during early voting time for the voter with an absentee ballot to go to an early voting location to return his or her ballot to a Registrar of Voter employee, instead of having to go to the ROV's office.
Right.
And so it actually gives people more opportunity to return their absentee ballot, but also emphasize the point that we want it to be handed to an ROV employee. What those folks do is they have paperwork to say who returned grandma's
Right, yeah.
ballot. Because there are some laws around that. You could not deliver 100 ballots. You can only deliver your ballot, your immediate family, or one other person's ballot. And so there's paperwork involved to make
Yeah.
sure that you're not coming every day to deliver more ballots, for example. And those are some of the things that were in Senator Mills's bill. Some of that already exists in current law, and he was really just trying to solidify that. Again, common sense.
Right.
We just want to make sure that the ballots don't get lost, that they're being appropriately handled, and they're going to the people, the officials, in whose hands they need to go so that they get properly managed.
And what I like about this, it kind of piggybacks on a law you mentioned. That not many people really realize how many election laws that we actually have. That when you mail in your paper ballot now, your absentee ballot now, that if you sign, you have to have it witnessed, and that witness can only witness one ballot at a time. This way, I think Kyle explained it to me a while back. And so this kind of piggybacks on that and makes it another check and balance. So I like that one. So that one got vetoed, though.
It did.
So that one's going to be up in this next veto session, which we'll ask about that in a minute. Senate Bill 220 got vetoed.
Is that Senator Cloud's
Yes.
bill? So Senator Cloud's bill also...
She has two of them that got vetoed, actually.
Yeah.
And if anybody watches my video with Senator Cloud, you'll hear all about her story. She did interviewed Senator Cloud a long time ago. She actually went through an election fraud in her own district, and she had to go to court over it. She actually won, but she was able to prove. So she knows a lot about election fraud.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, she did have two bills vetoed. Let's talk about Senate Bill 224 first.
Okay.
Because it kind of fits in with Senator Mills's bill. Senate Bill 224 says that you have to have an ID, a voter ID, associated with your absentee ballot, with your ballot and your request form. So, for example, right now, the only way you know if the voter is who they say they are is by trying to match the signatures on the envelope, right, when they return their ballot.
Yeah.
Does that match their ballot request form? Does it match the signature on file? That's the only way you really know if that's the voter.
And your
is who they
signature
say they are.
changes, and
Right. So you're depending on citizens
Right.
in comparing signatures and determining that that is in fact the same person. What Senator Cloud was doing in her bill is saying that we can put some more definitive information on the absentee ballot and the request form, like the last four digits of your social security number
Yeah.
or your driver's license number. And she had a number of different ways that you could demonstrate that you are who you are, and that
Right.
would tie to your voter record.
one of these common sense things.
Common sense, just trying to make sure that
Yeah.
that you are who you say you are, and providing a more secure ballot. Of course, you have to have your voter ID to vote early or to vote on election day.
Right.
You have to show your driver's license or
Exactly.
your ID card. So this is just basically saying absentee balloting should be equally as secure.
I like that. And in her other one, now her second one?
Yeah, Senate Bill 220 had to do with auditing, just more audits available by the legislative auditor to audit our election processes. And again, nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
If you don't check on things every now and then, you don't realize when perhaps you could be doing things that were not consistent with state law. And so it's just a good checkup, and so I fully support both bills.
Just like government, between the branches of government has checks and balances, between the legislative branch and the the executive branch, so should our ballots, our election system have that. And what I especially like about this, and I always bring it up, is that we live in a world where today people are hacking into your computer, hacking into your ID, hacking into your bank account. We should have more checks and balances as we move into a digital system, or digital age rather. Having more checks and balances is a good thing. We got Representative Farnham's bill. That one creates a supplemental annual canvass of registered voters to maintain accurate voter rolls. That one got vetoed.
Representative Farnham was on the right track. He's wanting, again, to make sure that our voter records are accurate.
Yeah.
And so one of the hardest things you can
Different
ever
from
do...
dead people.
Different from dead people. This is more people who have moved.
Right.
People are constantly moving. Of course, some people are not very stable in
Right.
terms of, where they live. And so it's hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
And so he put some things in his bill that make that process a little bit better. It also, I think, addresses when people move out of state, in our state or out of our state, and how we might communicate with other states to make sure that we're passing along that information. So, you don't have people that are registered in two different states.
Exactly. A lot of people don't realize Now, do these bills connect to other departments at all? I'd heard about a bill that connected, or like I said, the dead people. The voter registration could connect to the health department. So if somebody dies, they send that information to the Secretary of State. Is that how that works?
Yeah,
That's how that bill works, but I don't know how this
both
one
of
works.
those bills, yeah, are trying to make our agencies talk with each other. One of the
Right.
things that we don't do very well
Right.
is one agency communicate with another agency with relevant information. And so his bill does attempt to do that, to address that a little bit better, and to require that once you get that information, you do something with it.
Right.
So in some cases, we communicate the information, but then nothing gets done with it. And so, again, common sense. We all
Yeah.
want the right people. We want everyone to vote. We want everyone to register to vote. We want people to vote that are eligible to vote. And, that's what all this legislation is.
Exactly. Coming up with lots of good stuff. Representative Hodges had a bill, an election bill that got vetoed. What about that one?
Her bill was focused on poll watchers, having more poll watchers available. What's wrong with that?
Is there a limit now?
Right now, poll watchers are provided or can be provided by the candidates themselves.
Okay.
So if I'm running and I have volunteers that I can
Right.
I can send, they can go through training and they can be poll watchers. This bill basically allows both of the major state parties to be able to send volunteers and go through training, et cetera. And that's a great help as a candidate.
Right.
Your volunteers are pretty burned out by the time
Right,
election
exactly.
day rolls around because they've
Yeah.
been working really hard. And in some cases, perhaps, we don't have a big volunteer base in some parts
Right.
of our state. And so this is just allowing both the Republican and Democrat parties to send poll watchers and go through the same training and the same process. And so, again, what's wrong with that?
Exactly. This is just another way to make people feel secure. And when you walk into a polling place, if there's more people in there that are actually monitoring it, it's another checks and balances. The people that are working the poll booths, are either hired, are they volunteers, or some are volunteers, some are hired. But this kind of adds another layer of people who don't have any interest, in anything other than just making sure it's accurate.
Yeah, there are very specific rules about how poll watchers can observe but not participate,
Yeah.
and all of that. And so we want that.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to have a few extra eyeballs, and in case something seems to go kind of awry or seem to be off track in some way. And so many states have done similar legislation, and there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. It's good common sense. These
I like
are all
that, yeah.
common sense reforms that do nothing other than make it easier for people to vote and harder
Right.
to cheat.
So I like that, easier to vote and harder to cheat. And all these things that we just talked about, all 8 of these, while the first 2 got passed, the last 6 got vetoed, all of them have the true intention of being able to make our elections more secure. And I like that, and get us to a different age and create a platform, from what I can see, that's going to have even more secure elections in the future. Well, we have a veto session coming up. Do you want to come? Or we don't know yet. We won't know until is it the 20th?
The 15th.
The 15th. Mm-hmm. So next week we'll know for sure whether everybody sends in or holds their cards. Is there anything you want to comment on that? Anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, I'm on the record in support of a veto override session.
Okay.
I think it is part of the checks and balances of our system. We pass the laws, the governor has an opportunity to veto, and we have the opportunity to override it with a 2/3 vote, which is a pretty tall bar.
Yeah.
All of these bills, I think, only required a majority to pass and 2/3 to override a veto. So we'll be studying the governor's veto messages as to his thoughts as to why
Right.
they were not good legislation, and be working, with the authors about moving those bills forward. Many of them passed with more than 2/3 vote
Right.
when they passed the Senate and the House, and so I think those bills have a very strong chance of passing. The 2 bills that probably people are talking the most about have to do with the Women's Fairness in Sports bill by Senator Mizell
Right.
and the Constitutional Carry bill by Senator Morris. I think these election reform bills
Right.
are also good business.
Yeah, these 6 that got vetoed, I think these are prime.
I think they're
Yeah.
common sense. It's hard to argue
Yeah.
with common sense. And so we'll see. I mean, I think the authors, again, will take the
Right.
lead on their bills. The Senate bills will start in the Senate first. The House bills will start in the House first, and if they can get 2/3 majority, then they'll cross over to the other
Right.
chamber and be debated. It's a 5-day session. It'll start if enough members, agree that we should go back. It'll start on July 20th,
Okay.
and last for up to 5 days.
Right. So what's also interesting about this is it doesn't say a whole lot in the Constitution, about how it's to be held. It just says a lot of people realize that it's actually already mandated to happen every year. It's just whether it gets vetoed or people elect not to have it. From what I understand.
Yeah.
So are all vetoed bills up for grabs on this?
They are. I think we'll generate a list of every bill that was vetoed. The one area in dispute, and we kind of passed over this on the election reform bills, but there was an important election reform bill that was vetoed while we were in session, and that's HB 20 by Representative Miguez. That has to do with prohibiting private funding.
I'm glad you brought that up. This is a good one.
Yeah, it prohibits private funding of election-related expenses. So last year, many of you probably read that Zuckerberg, the founder
Right.
of Facebook, was offering his foundation, millions of dollars to communities around the country to offset their election expenses. And there have been lots of reports on how that money actually got spent.
Mm-hmm.
What we have said in the state of Louisiana is that running an election is a state responsibility, and we're going to make sure we properly fund it. And we want part of what makes your process work is when it's evenly executed, the same rules around the entire state.
Right.
Parishes can't do their own rules. These are laws, and it's governed at the state level.
Yeah.
And so we did not want money in different parishes being used differently and taking the risk of things being
Right.
managed. Some parish has more resources than
Right.
others, and things are being done differently, and having outsiders basically meddle in our elections. And so that bill, the point of that bill was to sort of restate that. That bill was vetoed by the governor while we were in session. One of the things that we're unclear about, because this is a historic veto override session should it happen. The legislature, since the Constitution was written last in 1974, has never called ourselves back into a veto override session. So the rules around how it works, to your point, are not really well spelled out. And so there's some debate about whether bills that were vetoed while we were in session can be considered in the veto override session or not. I hope they can, and this would be one bill that I would support and hope that we can deliberate on.
Okay, I have to tell you more about some things I've researched, what I found too. But that exactly. So I think all bills, if should be that are vetoed should be if it's a veto session, I think all bills should have. That's just my opinion, because that's another smart one. Because my opinion on that is if an outside source is having the opportunity to put money into a municipality or an area, to help fund it, then they're eventually going to have the voice of that clerk of court's ear, or as you like to put it, and what I like that you said is building confidence in people in our voting system. If they know that an outside source is not putting money into a clerk of court's office or whatever, it's to give those people in those areas a little more confidence, knowing that somebody else's money might not be influencing, if I said that the right way, in a roundabout way.
Well, and there have been reports in other states where that money was made available, where there were also people who came in with that money who were actually in the polling locations, where the ballots were being counted, maybe the absentee ballots, et cetera, and they were actually interfering with the work of the trained polling commissioners and trying to suggest different processes and different ways of doing things. Not to say necessarily that they had nefarious intentions.
Exactly.
Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but they're not familiar with the laws of that state, as are the trained polling commissioners.
Exactly.
And that is not their job. And that's the risk you run when you open the door for outside people to come into your business and get involved in your elections.
You say it so much better than I did.
I think you do fine.
Thank you very much. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add into this next session, or anything else coming up before we let everybody watch the video?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about these issues. I am excited about the veto override session. I think, again, it's part of the process.
Right.
And, we'll have a good debate. We'll talk about it. Who knows? Maybe we'll pass a few
I like
veto
that.
overrides.
The first time in history. It'll be history.
It will be history making should we do that. And, a lot of legislators are busy now back in our districts dealing with lots of local issues that have been maybe not getting enough attention while we've been in session. And so I'm glad to be back home in my district. Lots of important things happening, and I know the other members are too. So thanks for helping us get the word out to the public.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time. And remember, the veto session is not anything. What I want to throw in there, it's not anything other than the legislative branch showing that they're equal. I think, and it looks over for the people. So should be excited about, and people should be excited about it. Is what I'm trying to say. That this is going to be an exciting time for the people's voice to be heard, and I really like that. And thank you very much for standing up for everybody.
You're very welcome.
Senator, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Everybody else, please share the video as always. But also, if you just want to have the video audio, down below I have a link in this post to just the audio version on podcast. Remember, William Wallace for America. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.